Arike Agumbawale.
Mhm.
I mean, 1000%. That is the conversation that we should have had instead of Caitlin. Welcome to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia J, and I'm here with the one and the only Ashley Nicole Moss.
Hi guys. Hi everyone.
And I feel like we say this
That's
every
funny.
single way. Oh, let me wave back.
My
I'm
slow
surprised.
wave.
I'm surprised some like waving emojis didn't
I
come
know,
out.
right? Maybe you
You know what I'm
broke it. I
saying?
think you jinxed my machine.
I don't know.
I think you jinxed the app.
Listen, if I don't have them, you don't have them. But anyways, I feel like we say this every single week. It was a big week in women's sports this week, Ashley.
I'm just tired. I'm so tired. You
I
see these
know.
see these dark circles under my eyes? It's because I'm not getting sleep. It's because I'm exhausted from
Team
just
no
just
sleep.
everything that's happening on everywhere. It's just everywhere.
I feel like it's always something like right when things start to calm, even though I'm obviously glad women's sports is blowing up on every level.
Yeah.
Just when things start to calm down, the heat right back up.
Listen, before we dive into that, because we're going to dive into that right now, but make sure you guys are liking, sharing, subscribing, following us on all of our channels right here below: X, Twitter, whatever you're calling it these days, TikTok, Instagram, and our individual channels as well. We also have this QR code here for you to scan so you can listen to us if you're more of a listener of podcasts and not a watcher. And you scan this QR code, and wherever you listen to your podcasts, primarily, it will go ahead and just pop up right there. We make it so easy for you. Spotify, Apple, we're on it all. And make sure you're also just sharing with a friend, who's sharing with another friend, who's sharing with another friend. The list goes on and on. And speaking of list, Alicia, Team USA.
Oh my goodness. Well, listen, we're not there yet. We do have to break down a little bit of all the sports that are occurring right now.
Good,
So
let's ease into it. That's a good idea. Ease into it. Okay.
All right. So easing on in, let's talk about what's happening on clay first. So
Mhm.
Iga Swiatek won her third straight French Open title and fourth French Open title overall, which is crazy.
Insane.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So she defeated Jasmine Paolini in straight sets, 6-2, 6-1. And then fifth Grand Slam total. Like, how do you even get to that point? It is just fascinating and amazing. She's the third woman to win 3 straight titles at French Opens, and then first since 2005 to 2007. So hasn't lost a title match at any major and is 5-0, which is wild.
It's
In
extremely
tennis.
difficult to do too.
When you
Like,
think about it, it makes me tired.
I don't think people realize, like, when you talk about tennis specifically, and there's other sports that this applies to, but when you talk about tennis, it's a little bit different, or I shouldn't say a little, it's a lot different than when you are competing in a league that's only American, right? Tennis, you're competing against tennis players from all over the world. And all over the world, you're competing with them to be ranked in a certain order, in a certain hierarchy.
Yeah.
You're competing them when you go to different tournaments, when you go to different matches, when you go to different invitationals. I mean, it's not as easy, and I put easy in quotations because none of it's easy, but it's not like you're just focusing on, okay, I got to worry about California, I got to worry about Vegas, I got to worry about New York. No, you got to worry about North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Australia, like all the continents. It's just crazy to be able to remain undefeated when you just put into your mind exactly what the breakdown and logistics of tennis are. So I have such immense respect for tennis players.
Yeah, and especially Iga, she's just so humble, and she's just like, I'm so thankful that I won. She's just playing tennis, and she's just really good at it. And so it's just really amazing to see her win all of it, is how we can put it. But on the hardwood, Arike Agumbawale, which I will talk about a little bit later too, she became the first player in the WNBA history to score 20 or more points in each of the first 10 games of the season. And then A'ja Wilson, who, in my opinion, is the best player in the league, best women's basketball player in the world. But anyways, set a WNBA record with 20 points or more in 14 straight games, which is also incredibly hard, especially with the amount of games they have and how they're like kind of putting so many games into, a short period of time because of the Olympics coming up and the break that they're going to have. It's just amazing how
Yeah,
people
it's
are
an Olympic year
performing.
for sure.
Yeah, and then on the grass, the Chicago Red Stars set the NWSL record for attendance in the first women's soccer match at Wrigley Field with over 35,000 fans in attendance. It was part of a larger weekend of the NWSL, and as the league had more than 100,000 fans in attendance for a single weekend for the first time. 100,000.
Insane. We love that. We're going to talk to Jenny Chiu later on to really break that down. CBS is on Jenny Chiu, but that's amazing. We love seeing record-breaking attendance in sports across many different platforms, many different arenas, many different stadiums, many different fields. Keep packing them out and just showing people that there is a strong, strong, strong interest for women's sports. You name the sport, the interest is there. You just got to go ahead and make it accessible and easy and just stress-free for people to come and just simply enjoy good sports, whatever that sport may be. And again, we'll talk about this with Jenny a little bit more later on in the show, but the time has come. So
The
let's take a
time
deep
has
breath.
come.
Let's do our 1, 2, 3 breaths, our Pilates yoga breaths, and let's brace for impact. Go ahead, Alicia, take it away. Let me take a drink of water while you do this.
Listen, I wish I had some near me because I would definitely
Need a
take a
little
drink.
something.
But the USA women's basketball roster, I guess it was kind of unofficially announced, but
Yeah, I
it's
thought
official.
I thought it was beneficial, but what do I know?
They announced it today.
Yeah.
Like officially.
Okay, thank you, Emma. The actual official roster was announced today, and you would think people would be talking about who is on it, right? But they really were talking about who was left off the roster, and that was Caitlin Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And it has since been announced that she's like probably more likely on the short list to be a replacement player, just in case there's an injury. But regardless, people, I mean, it just caused so much controversy this week. It was everywhere on every single channel,
It's
which
a
is
shocker.
beautiful. Yeah, which is, listen, I love that women's sports is getting the attention that it deserves, but also it just seems to be just like controversy after controversy after controversy. So with that said, I'm going to give you just a little bit of what the roster had on it, right? Because so many people have not focused on that. So there were 3 first-timers on the roster: Sabrina Ionescu, Alyssa Thomas, and Kalia Copper. Excuse me. Clark, Brianna Jones, Aaliyah Boston, like I just said, but all of them are reportedly on the short list for injury replacement. Diana DT, listen, and that's another point that people were kind of arguing, like, should she still be on this team, which is ludicrous, but she'll go for her 6th Olympic gold medal, her 6th Olympics in a new all-time international basketball record. So those are some, and they're going for 8 straight. I believe they're going for 8 straight gold medals. And it's also important to note that 7 out of the 12 that are on the team also were on the gold team in Tokyo. So when you look at those stats and the players that are on the team, and then obviously who was left off, what are your thoughts on this Olympic roster?
I didn't think this was a thing, and I'm still confused as to why it's a thing. And I tweeted this, and I had a couple of tweets that I had put out because I saw the segment on one of the other sports shows that kind of caught fire, went viral on social media, and I was just very confused what the issue was because look, I don't think anybody is saying that Caitlin Clark would not have been a asset if there were 20 spots on the roster, but there's not. There's a certain amount of spots on the roster. We're talking about a rookie, and also people have failed to realize when you're a rookie, there's certain training camps and things that you have to go ahead and go to, especially as a first-time potential Team USA representative, right? And to no fault of her own, her schedule will not allow that. The girl just left college 2.5 months ago. There's a lot that has happened. So in that regard, I thought that that was common knowledge. So I was confused as to why we were arguing this. I'm also confused on this whole take behind the ratings because it's the Olympics. Like, I don't know if people realize that, like, if Team USA is playing Croatia, it's just the first country that can come to mind. So I don't know why, it just is. Do you think Croatia gives a damn that Caitlin Clark is not suiting up for Team USA? They don't care. Do you think London, who turns in and to watch this game, cares that Caitlin Clark's not suiting up for Team? You're talking about a global sporting event that does millions and millions of views every 4 years. This is not the All-Star game that you can say, okay, well, popularity matters. And if you want to bring eyes to it, you got to go ahead and make sure Caitlin Clark's in that game. That I could understand. Caitlin Clark being snubbed from an All-Star roster would be like, okay, now we have a conversation. We're talking about the Olympics. The Olympics has never been a popularity contest. It has always been the country sends over the best of the best to represent America against the other countries. Now, that doesn't mean that if you didn't make the roster, you're not the best of the best, but the roster includes the best of the best. We have a lot to choose from. Not everybody can make the roster. It sucks. It is the way it is. In 4 years from now, when the Olympics turn back around and they're in Los Angeles, I guarantee you Caitlin Clark will have a Team USA jersey on and everybody can calm down. I don't understand what the problem is. I don't see why this is a controversy.
I don't see why it's a controversy either, except for this is a case of the casual fan, the casual women's basketball fan who doesn't understand what the
basketball
Olympics.
fan in general, because it's basic understanding of the Olympics. But
We would think that it was basic, but we all know that common sense is not common, right?
This is true.
So the goal of the Olympic team is to win a gold. That is what it is for. It is not for marketing. It is not for increased attendance, rather. It is not for ratings. It is to win a gold. We are going for 8. You pick the best players that have put in the work and have shown that they are good for the team that is going to win the gold and the spots that are needed on that team to win the gold. This is not we just need to get fans into the arenas. That's not what we're doing here. We're actually representing our country and going for gold. And that does not equal just putting a player on, because while she has done a lot for the sport, she is just not ready for an experience like this.
Yeah, I mean,
also it's a lose-lose situation, because let's say you put her on the team and you take someone off who is deserving and could really put an impact onto the team. Not to say that she wouldn't have any impact, but I'm saying who we know through all the camps that they have to go through, and all of the 4 years of preparation for this, 3 or 4 years of preparation. If you put her on and let's say the ratings don't go up, well, then why did you put Caitlin Clark on the team? There's always going to be something. And also, I think that the casual fan doesn't know that there are other people that were snubbed that should be on before Caitlin, like Arike Agumbawale. I mean, 1000%. That is the conversation that we should have had instead of Caitlin. If you actually know women's basketball and understand Olympic basketball and what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah. I mean, also, like, the word snub may not even be the right word, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't think when I say you send the best, people had an issue when I said, well, you send the best of the best to represent the country. And that's not saying that if you're not on the roster, you're not the best of the best. But I think also things come into play, experience. You send, that's why you see a lot of the same faces represent the country. You see it on the men's side, you see it on the women's side. Breanna Stewart, I believe, has been 3 times. Like, you see a lot of familiar faces because it's a different level of competition, the different level of preparation and the experience. Again, there are first time Team USA members. We see it, but you mix that in with predominantly a lot of experience, because that experience makes all the difference. This is not, just the WNBA league or the NBA league where it's like, okay, well, you lose a game, we're going to see Minnesota again in 2.5 weeks. We can go ahead and make sure we get. No, you mess up against Japan. That's it. There's nothing, you know what I mean? There's no spinning the block on that. You don't get to play them again in a few weeks. It's a one and done situation. So you send a combination of experience, you send a combination of talent, and you go ahead and create the best roster, going ahead and adhering to both of those needs. And obviously, there's more intricate details that are in the mix, but we're talking about a country, being USA, that has consistently won the gold in this particular sport on both the men and the women's side. I think that the committee knows what they're doing. It's not a conspiracy against Caitlin Clark. And I understand that she's the lightning rod. And if you want to go viral, if you want people to, subscribe, like, comment, whatever, you talk about her. But now we're not even making sense because people, and I tweeted this as well, are acting like we went to LA Fitness, rounded up 12 women, put them in Team USA jerseys over Caitlin Clark and said, y'all are going to Paris. These are not random individuals. These are gold medalists. These are world champions. These are rookies of the year. These are DPOYs. These are MV. I mean, they're not a group of random women. I don't understand what the issue is.
No, not a group of random women. And the process that they go through to even get to this, she wasn't really a part of. And that's
And
not,
again, to
and
no
that's not
fault
her
of her
fault.
own. Her
It's not her
schedule just
fault.
did not allow that.
Yeah, her schedule
Right.
didn't allow it. But I will say one thing about this that I actually think is going to serve Caitlin better is that she's going to get a break. And literally, I mean, she has gone from, you could even count both of her last two college seasons were a whirlwind, and then going to the draft and then being on a team and literally playing almost like immediately after you get into training camp. She has been through a lot, just like all of the rookies have, right? Because they've all been on that same path. And I think that for the longevity of their career, this is going to be good for them to get a break. And also, Caitlin said it herself. She said that this is going to literally like light a fire underneath her to be an impact on Olympics to come, So I think that in the long run, even though people can't see it, it's going to serve Caitlin better as well.
And I think also, I mean, when we talk about the history of rookies who have made an Olympic team, right? I want to say, I'm looking at it right now. You had Rebecca Lobo in 96. You had Taurasi in 2004. You had Candace Parker in 08. You had Brianna Stewart in 16. And I believe in 1992, there was a rookie on the Dream Team, Christian. I'm forgetting his last name, but it's very rare for rookies to make Olympic teams. But when you talk about the WNBA side, let's focus on that. We're talking about Candace Parker, Brianna Stewart, Diana. I mean, this is no knock to Caitlin Clark because she has done so much in such a short amount of time, especially when you talk about her collegiate career. But Candace Parker won a national title. Brianna Stewart won 4 of them. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about women who have come in. That transition from collegiate to professional was a little bit smoother. And that smoother may not be the right word, but I'm going to use that for lack of a better word because they have won national titles. Maybe they were physically more ready for that transition. Caitlin Clark she's right now in what we like to call the rookie rut. Like, she's trying to figure out who she is in this space as a professional player. Her body's not where it needs to be yet. Her decision-making is not quite where it needs to be yet. The pace, her court awareness, it gets better and better every game. But it's no knock to her that she's not ready yet. And it's very rare to be a rookie and to be ready in general for the professional league, but especially for the Olympic team. And when I say Candace Parker and Brianna, those are anomalies. Those are exceptions to the rules. They're not the rule. They were further along than I feel like Caitlin is. So I just want people to kind of look at things case by case and stop trying to make it a generalized blanket. She will be on Team USA for the LA Olympics. It's going to be okay, everyone. You'll go ahead and be able to root for her in 4 years from now. Let's enjoy the women we sent to Paris and let's go win the gold. Simple as that.
Right. Focus on the gold. And
focus on the gold. Listen, we're going to go ahead and focus on this next segment here because we are really excited to go ahead and introduce our next guest, Sasha DiGiulian, to the show. Now, listen, Alicia did a phenomenal interview with her. She held it down while I was busy talking about the men's side of things. And I want to go ahead and give some cliff notes before we go ahead and roll this clip here, or this interview rather. Third woman in the world to accomplish the grade grade of climbing rather. So first North American woman to climb the grade of 9A 5.4D, which is recognized as the hardest sports climb ever and the ever achieved by a woman. Third woman in the world to accomplish that grade. Has also accomplished multiple first ascents and 28 first female ascents around the world. Now, I'm not afraid of heights, but I tried rock climbing once. Was not for me. So it was not for me. But she has a documentary coming out on June 18th titled Here to Climb on HBO Max, which chronicles her journey as she looks to make a series of female first ascents. Absolutely love a trailblazer, love a woman knocking down barriers. Let's roll this. And Alicia, I want you to go ahead and kind of recap everything that you experienced during this interview.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to share this interview with you, not only because of, she has an amazing film coming out about her life that she has compiled over the last 4 years, but also just her tenacity.
Yeah.
Sasha has accomplished so many things in climbing, and not only in climbing, but in business. I mean, literally, her mind just does not stop. She's always thinking about the next move and how she can up the sport and just up her profile and everything that she does. She even bounced back from 2 hip surgeries to climb again, which, listen, it's hard to even climb the first time, to even get up there and do all of the things that she accomplished. But
I can attest to that.
But then after, yeah, no, I mean, I can't even imagine. But then after the hip surgeries that she had, fighting back, having to learn to walk 3 times, just coming back and being like at the top of her sport again, it's just a phenomenal conversation. And please listen. Tell me what. Okay.
We're good.
Hey, it's Alicia J, and we're here with an amazing interview on We Need to Talk Now. I am so excited because we have with us a world champion, a USA champion, the first woman to free climb the north face of Eiger Mountain, which is crazy. Columbia University graduate, don't leave that off. The one and only iconic rock climber, Sasha DiGiulian. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. And I'll enter by saying, because it's captured in the film, a route on the north face of the Eiger, not the first woman to climb the north face of the Eiger.
Okay, so can you give us the distinction on that? Because
yep,
we need to know.
I've got a lot of heat for that. It's the first woman to climb a route on the north face of the Eiger versus first woman to climb the north face of the Eiger.
Okay, got you. So for everybody that doesn't know about rock climbing, there are 3 types, right? Can you break down the types for us just before we even start the conversation about every amazing thing that you do?
Yeah, so in competition climbing, there's sport climbing, which is also classified as lead climbing. There's bouldering, and then there's speed climbing. And in speed climbing, it's a head-to-head race. Fastest one up the wall wins. Bouldering, you have a set of climbs. And so you may have 5 different boulder problems is what they're called. And boulders are typically around 15 feet. You don't have a rope, but you have a gymnastics pad underneath you, which in climbing we call a crash pad. So if you fall down to the crash pad. And then in sport climbing or lead climbing, you have a rope, but you have taller walls. So like around 60-foot walls inside where you have a rope. If you fall into that rope. What I do now is big wall free climbing is my main focus. And free climbing is by use of your hands and feet only with a rope for safety versus free soloing, which is without a rope entirely, which, we've seen that film maybe with Alex Honnold doing that, where if you fall, the risk is certain fatality. 99.9% of the time. There's also ice climbing. There is a myriad of different types of climbing, but those 3 really are what competition climbing is. And then big wall free climbing is the subject of the film Here to Climb.
Well, listen, as somebody who hardly climbs a flight of stairs, I am just literally in awe of everything that you do. And you're talking about, the type of climbing that you do. and this might be hard to pick because you've done so many things, but if you could pick one of your accomplishments that stands out the most that you would say is just like at the top for you, what would that be and why?
That's a great question. Right now, I'm inclined to say that my recent climb of Ryu, which was the hardest big wall achieved by a team of women, an expedition that I led after having double hip reconstruction surgery, is certainly a climb at the top of my proudest achievements, because it came on the heels of so much uncertainty, on having this near career ending injury, on not knowing if I would come back from it, and also coming back in such an engaging and empowering way with two incredible women that I climbed this route with, named Brett Harrington and Matilda Suderland. And the whole expedition was just very beautiful and challenging and full of so much exciting adventure. I look to it as a really engaging and empowering achievement.
Well, you talked a little bit, you kind of threw it in there that you had double hip surgery. I mean, I know that it was, from doing research, it was the comeback that you had to even come back to even climb was just, it had me awestruck, to be honest. You had 5 surgeries. You had to learn how to walk again 3 times, at least 3 times. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey and how it made you a better climber?
I had really chronic hip pain, which I didn't know where it was coming from, that got worse and worse over the course of 3 years. And I had a big expedition that I was planning to go down to Mexico to climb a route called Logical Progression, which is a 3,000-foot climb that no woman had ever done before. And leading up to it, I contacted a surgeon that one of my sponsors put me in touch with, because I needed to get a cortisone shot, because what was happening was my femur head on both sides was essentially popping out of the socket. And I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do a lot of the approaches to climbs that often include big hikes, because my lower body was so unstable. And when I asked for the cortisone shot, being a good doctor and all, they were like, we need to do an MRI so that we know what we're working with. And when I went in for the MRI, it was right before I was going down for this big expedition. And the surgeon essentially said, hey, you have like 2 to 6 months before you need total hip replacement, because you've shredded through all of your connective tissue that's holding your femur head in place. You have too shallow of a socket, and you are on the brink of bone-on-bone rubbing, which essentially would completely destroy whatever I had left within my hips. So what I was diagnosed with was I had double hip dysplasia, which is a congenital condition that I was likely born with, but I've been climbing for, at this point, 25 years, and started competing when I was 7. So at that stage, about 20 plus years of constant, really high demand and grind on my hips. And what was a part of the surgery of double PAO was essentially 5 surgeries over the course of 18 months that included breaking my pelvic bone on both sides into 4 pieces, shaving down the femur head, making a deeper socket, and sewing together all of the connective tissue. Then in that process, my abs are cut out of my body multiple times. The sciatic nerve is isolated to avoid paralysis. It's a series of very big surgeries, 2 of which were 10-hour open hip, which of course I was asleep for. And the uncertainty that came with it was no surgeon that I met with ever knew a female athlete or male athlete that had gone through this and returned to being a professional athlete. And so that was kind of the big uncertainty change that the film really takes a deep dive into as well.
Wow. I mean, it would be hard enough for people to even get back to walking, let alone climbing, obviously at the level that you're climbing. what lesson out of all the lessons that you learned during that period of time did you take into what you're doing now? Like, what is the one lesson that you would tell somebody to help them with their life that you learned during that time?
The lesson that I would say is focus on what you can control, because my life as a professional athlete is constantly challenged by uncontrollable variables, including inclement weather conditions and every single which way that things can go sideways on an expedition. And those same parameters kind of apply to uncertain times in your life. I really zoned in on defining what brought me meaning in my life during a time when exercise and climbing couldn't be a part of it. So that was when I rolled up my sleeves and I wrote my first coming of age memoir book, Take the Lead. And I started my first company, Send Bars, which is a nutrition bar company. But I really needed that purpose, and I needed to focus on my other passions in life in order to get through this period of time where I didn't know what the other side of the tunnel looked like.
Well, another passion that you've had for the last 4 years is really capturing your story. Here to Climb is coming out on June 18th, which is amazing. Everybody should go see it because your story is phenomenal. Why did you want to capture your story and why release it now? Like, what's so important about the timing of now?
Women are reaching new heights in climbing and in sports overall. It's incredible. I was at a bar the other night and the WNBA was on TV. Like, what a great moment. And I also like to say, not just a moment, like, women's sports are here to stay. And my career wouldn't exist without the women that came before me, like Lynn Hill, who's in the film, who really showed to me at a young age that you can be passionate about something and make it your career. And so I hope that this film just serves some fraction of the inspiration that I really garnered from the women that came before me as a source of inspiration for being your most authentic self and for challenging yourself and for overcoming obstacles and for really living in that space of duality of whatever that manifests for you. For me, it was always feeling like an outsider, as wanting to be feminine and wanting to be strong and not really knowing my place within the outdoor industry because I was constantly cutting against the grain and upsetting people by my sheer existence of painting my nails pink and having, blonde hair and doing things that were really challenging for both men and for women.
Well, you talk about being authentic, and we know that a lot of times on social media, especially, it's hard to be authentic. It's hard to be your true self because people always have something to say. And I know that you've dealt with that a lot. You're laughing because you're like, yes, I have. Absolutely. You've dealt with that a lot. You've had to really, really kind of like talk to the haters, talk back to them, like stand up for yourself. And what do you give, or what do you say, or how do you give advice to people who are dealing with the same thing?
Cyberbullying is a real issue online and offline. I think that bullying in general, I have a very low tolerance for it. There is an incident that the film does include, which was actions taken by an individual that persisted over a series of years that were both happening online and offline. And I would say for the advice, it's really leaning into your support network of people that you trust and that you care about, because we live in a world that's very connected, but also very disconnected. And the meaningful experiences and the sense of empowerment that I've really found in my life is by learning whose opinions to listen to and whose opinions to kind of let roll off my back and know they exist, but you can't satisfy everyone. But as far as when we go through challenging times with people who are really hurting us, I think that really believing in who we are matters. And this incident happened when I was quite young, and I was being targeted by someone quite a bit older than me as well. And I'm glad that it's a part of the film because I think it's a really human and real vulnerable issue that should be addressed head on.
Absolutely. And you talked about being who you are. Who are you? How would you talk about yourself?
That's a great question too, because I would say that climbing is a huge part of my identity. I also am an entrepreneur and a speaker and a writer and an avid climate activist. I really believe in protecting the places that we love to recreate and the places that are so vital for our planet to exist and to thrive. And I like to think, I am a positive person doing my best. Like, identity is a subject that's a big part of the film, as well as it follows me growing up in even just the vignette of the 4 years that we were filming.
Well, I'm definitely excited for the world to see that part too, because, with athletes, we see a lot of what they do. Like, we'll see you climb, right? But we don't really often get to see the behind the scenes of everything. Yeah, we see what's on social media, but like this is an in-depth look. So I'm really excited for everybody to see that. And when little girls watch this, what do you want them to take away from it? Like that little girl who wants to be a rock climber, or just a climber in general, what do you want her to take away from your film?
I want her to feel empowered to pursue whatever it is that sets her heart on fire, and to feel limitless, and to feel like she can do whatever she wants to do, because it's true.
It's absolutely true. But I will say this, your sport in particular, it is male dominated. Like there's a lot of men obviously doing the sport. How would you tell someone to navigate that when they feel like they're the only woman doing what they're doing?
Yeah, climbing is one of those sports that's the parity between what men are able to accomplish and what women are able to accomplish, there actually is quite parity. And what's really interesting about that non-existence of the delta in performance is that it can lead to a challenge on fragile egos. And I think that as a woman being in a sport that's male dominated, I've certainly faced a lot of criticism of people who are scared of change or scared of someone who looks different entering the sport and doing things that maybe he can't accomplish, or the sport changing. And I think that what's really, really important across the board, across every single industry, is representation. And when we have representation of people doing things that we can look up to and say, hey, I can be like her and I can do that too, that's when real change and real progress in the industry of sports, but also business, but also every single, aspect of the workforce can exist. And I think that women supporting women really matters too. Traditionally, in the outdoor industry, there's been a scarcity mindset model because there isn't a lot of money involved in the outdoor industry, specifically in climbing. And people have seen, like, if this woman or if this man gets this sponsorship, then what does that mean to me? Instead of looking at it with abundance of, hey, this from my career, I got pushed back for even working with corporate companies and bringing them and welcoming them into climbing. But now in today's landscape, I see the next generation of climbers really empowered and supported by these same companies because there's a path and because they exist and because there's interest. And I think that if we were to broaden that to women in sports in general, like the media coverage, the attention, the every which way that we can bring the puzzle pieces together and make a future of representation, of seeing more people of that look different in front of this, of whatever, industry it is, it's really important.
Well, you talked a little bit about the rise of women's sports, and it definitely is on every level, and I absolutely love it. But when it comes to climbing, what do you think can be done to even improve the promotion of it even more?
I think that this film is a really great step in that direction of coverage of what women are doing. And I'd love to see this film lead into coverage of more female athletes doing really epic things in the adventure outdoor space. Because I know so many friends that are other female athletes in different sports, whether it's mountain biking or running or other climbers who are told, hey, you don't look like a mountain biker, or you don't look like a runner, or you don't look like a climber. And the reality is they are. Like they may not look like whatever that traditional appearance of a mountain biker, runner, or rock climber may look like, but these women are doing incredible feats, and we need to redefine how we categorize what these athletes look like, because they can also look like badass women.
Absolutely. And you talked about this film being one of the ways to show that. When I was watching the trailer specifically, there was one part where it looked like, and I don't know if this is the case, but it looked like you were on the side of, a rock, a mountain, a rock, and you had just accomplished something, but then you got emotional. I don't know if you remember the part that I'm talking about, but it just looked like you took a deep breath and then you could see that you got this emotion coming over you. Like how many times does that happen when you're doing these amazing things and accomplishing what you're accomplishing? Because you're always going after something. You're always going after the next thing. How often does that emotion happen? And also, like, can you enjoy the things that you accomplish when you're so ready to like go to the next thing and preparing for the next climb?
I think that staying in the emotion of when you accomplish something that you don't know if it's possible or not for you is really important, because life is moving for all of us in a very fast pace. And I think that sitting in failure and sitting in our success is really important, because feeling emotions and feeling that absolute bliss of accomplishing something that you didn't know if you could do or not, and then also feeling the raw emotion of what it takes to get there, and reliving those moments of darkness and uncertainty and of pushback and setbacks and all of that, it does bring out the rawest of emotions. And what I set out to achieve with the team on this film at HBO and Red Bull and Breakthrough Films is really, we are trying to capture the human experience, and in doing that, be as real and vulnerable as possible, because that, I think, is what I connect with when I see people's real struggles and their real emotions. And it's not all, sunshine and rainbows. There's a lot of, and cliche to say, blood, sweat, and tears that go into making magic happen. And I think that we're all looking for that challenge in our lives and what makes us feel super alive. And for me, that's come in the form of climbing, and it's come in the form of new pursuits now as well. But that human experience is what we set out to share.
Well, we're definitely going to check out your human experience on Here to Climb on June 18th. Before we go, we like to always get in a little rapid fire questions, if you don't mind. So I'm just going to start with an easy 10. We'll just get through them really quick.
Easy 10.
You're like, easy? I don't think so. I've been doing this all day. So one thing that you can't live without on a climb.
My climbing shoes.
Yeah, you definitely need those. Best part of a climb.
The partner. Your partner.
Yeah, you definitely need the partner as well. Listen, crucial. When I was doing my research, I was like, thank God for the partner.
I know. Literally keeping your life alive.
Yes, we need that. Favorite climb you have ever done?
That's so hard. I have so many. Maybe I'll say Mora Mora in Madagascar.
Okay, not a bad one to say. I'm sure it was amazing. Like, not many people can say that. Your list is just wild. What about the worst climb you've ever done?
Um, the climb in Sao Tome, which is featured in the film.
Just listen. Light flex, light flex. Okay. Favorite type of rock climbing?
I would say free climbing.
Okay, what
Actually, I would say deep water soloing. Deep water soloing is kind of like an extension over, but you're climbing these big cliffs. But if you fall, you have no rope. You fall into the water.
so that's your favorite, that you just fall into the water? Okay, okay, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. That would terrify me, but I love that you love it, and that's why who you are. That's why you are who you are. Um, one climb you haven't done yet that you want to do.
I have a specific climb that I really want to do on El Capitan in Yosemite.
Okay, we look forward to that because I already know you're going to do it. You've done everything else, so.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those like big audacious goals that you don't know, but I'll try.
No, it's done. I'm claiming it. So, favorite meal to prepare for a climb?
I always made my own bars, so I would say like my bars are what I eat often on climbs. Now they're packaged called Sen bars, but I eat a lot of rice. Oh, I was just past a Sen bar. These are what I would eat.
Come on, send. I love whoever passed that to you too. They were like, get this in here, get this in here. So what about your favorite meal after a climb? Because I would imagine that'd be a little different.
Yeah, I love Thai food after a big day out climbing. I love sushi. I have celiac disease, so I love a good gluten-free pizza.
Listen, come on, gluten-free pizza. After a climb, I'm sure it does hit a little differently after all the stuff.
Depends where you get the gluten-free pizza from, because some are hit or miss, but like I can name some spots. They're good.
Okay. Well, listen, we want those spots, so you can name those on your social media, and we'll hit that up, and we'll go to those spots. So here's something that we like to get from everyone. It's a word of advice to women in 7 words or less.
You never know until you try.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And this is the last question. The Olympics are this summer. What sport or athlete are you most looking forward to watching?
I'm really excited to see Brooke Rabatou and Natalia Gross compete in climbing.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to that. And we're looking forward to your film, Here to Climb, June 18th. Thank you so much for joining us, Sasha. It was awesome. And can't wait to watch your film.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for supporting the film, too.
Honestly, just so inspirational in just a multitude of different ways. I mean, there's so much to dissect from that conversation. But if you had to pick the biggest takeaway from your conversation with Sasha, what was it for you?
It was the words that she said, you'll never know until you try. And think about everything that she's accomplished. And when she was small, I believe she said in the documentary that she was at her brother's, because we had a screener. She was at her brother's birthday party, and there was rock climbing. And she got up there and she tried it, and it just blossomed into this amazing career where she inspires people every day and has accomplished so much in a sport that really doesn't even want to include her. So just simply trying the thing that you are scared of to try could blossom into this career, into a life, and into living exactly what you want to do, but you cannot do that until you try. So I think that just really like put everything in a bow of what we talked about, is like, none of that would have happened if she just didn't try. Yeah. And I think about that in my life. I'm like, girl, what are you sleeping on that you just have been too scared to do? So
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's a point of reflection for so many of us. And I hope that all of our listeners really reflect and figure out what it is that you're afraid of and what could you possibly do to conquer that fear. So that was amazing. I love that.
Absolutely. I love it too. So make sure that you watch her documentary. It premieres on the 18th and on HBO Max. It's going to be one that you will not want to miss for sure. And now, Ashley, it's time for our favorite of the week, our favorite of every single pod, Connecting Changes Everything, presented by AT&T. Now, Ashley, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the PWHL has had some things going on.
Some things. Okay.
Yes. And this week, we're connecting you to the story that is confusing a lot of people, including myself. So Natalie Darwitz, the general manager for the PWHL championship winning Minnesota franchise, they let her go right after they won the championship. Let her go. So literally a week after Minnesota won their first ever championship, they announced that they were cutting ties with her. Darwitz not only had a winning season, obviously with the championship, but is also a hockey legend herself, having played in 3 Olympic Games, won 3 World Championships, and back-to-back NCAA titles with the University of Michigan, where she was also an assistant coach. So definitely decorated in a lot of ways. So Alicia, initially, both sides really didn't give any feedback about what was going on. People were just like, okay, they win the championship and then you drop your GM. And there were some grumblings, but like they weren't confirmed that her and the head coach, Ken Klee, were, not really seeing eye to eye. So there was that, not confirmed, but people were saying that. And then Darwitz actually released a statement and said, I'm very proud of this team and organization that was built and the championship we brought home to this great state of hockey. At this time, I'm not able to provide any details regarding my departure. Thank you. So very short, like, hey, can't say anything. So that just increased everyone's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So then the PWHL vice president of hockey operations, Jana Hefford, held a small press conference. And I don't even know if I would call it a press conference personally, because like she apparently selected who was going to be there. So it wasn't open to everybody. It was just like, okay, I'm going to invite
more like a fireside chat then.
There we go. Let's call it a fireside chat.
Yeah.
But she just said in that press conference that the league performed a deep dive into what was going on in the market. The league performed a lengthy, months-long internal reviews supplemented by additional review by an outside third party. And then the reviews included interviews with PWHL Minnesota players and staff.
Okay.
And then also said, there's a couple more quotes, but I think they're important to the story. There's more. The feedback to us was pretty direct and pretty clear that there wasn't a path forward with the current personnel in place. It was with the work we did throughout the year, and it was clear that a change needed to be made. And then this is the one that was most interesting to me, because again, a lot of things haven't come out. There's been no specific, this is what it is. But the easy thing, and Hefford said this, the easy thing would be to look and say, this team won a championship. Everything's perfect. The harder thing to do is, I think, look at the broader picture of everything that's occurred. So when you put all of it together, it unfortunately led us to this decision. And the reason why that last quote hit me is, we don't know what happened in this situation yet. But I do wish that regardless of winning, regardless of what your organization has achieved, regardless of what it may look like to people, if there is something going on, I wish that people would just make a change like this. I don't know if it was merited in this case. We don't know. But I think it's something that all sports entities should adopt. Is like, I don't care if we're winning or not. If something is wrong and we pinpoint that, we need to make a change no matter what it looks like to us, because we've seen that traditionally that doesn't occur. things will go on for years and years.
It is
without a
interesting.
change.
Emma left us a note in kind of our notes for the show today, and she says that all the teams within the league are owned by the PWHL and the Mark Walter Group. So you can kind of wonder if being owned by a singular entity then takes away from the board of governors, if you will, right? So in the WNBA, in the NBA, in the NFL, I believe as well. Yeah. If you want to make a change that's going to affect a team drastically, that has to be voted on, right? Now, you can't just fire a coach, for example, without going through all the ownership groups that own that particular team. Usually, now there are exceptions if you're very, very rich, that team is owned by multiple people. There are minority owners, there's majority owners. So that board of governors has to approve a lot of the things that are going to affect the team. Now, if you're going to do something that overall affects the league, then it goes through the WNBA board of governors or the NBA board of governors or the NFL owners. So playing devil's advocate, you wonder if the lack of having those, I guess, different checks and balances, if you will, affects the decision making to where maybe it could just be like, let's just say somebody didn't like her and was like, let's get her out of here. There's nobody really to check that. You could just get her out of here. So it's good that you're proactive instead of being reactive. And if there's something wrong, you make that adjustment. But it also was kind of like a fine line, a little bit weary, because it could just be a personal vendetta, not what's best for the team, but who's going to stop you?
Yeah, and I think to your point, that definitely needs to be changed in this league. It shouldn't be like that at all. But I also wish that more people would adopt, and in this case, we don't know what happened. Let's be clear.
Right.
But I wish that more sports team would adopt, like, even if you're winning, if things need to be changed, you do it, because we've seen time and time again where things just keep going on and going on and going on
I
because
agree
it's
with
a
you.
winning team. So I think, both of these things are true, right? Like, that's a good practice. And then also they need to change the league.
I think what you're more saying is taking the principle from this situation and taking it in the sense of like not putting wins and losses over the betterment of the team and the individuals on that team, which we do see. Sometimes you can be a terrible owner or a terrible coach or, terrible whatever, insert position here. But sometimes it doesn't matter because we're not going to go ahead and mess with the machine that's winning championships, winning games, even if it's at the detriment of the men and women who are putting themselves out there each and every night to make sure we're able to do that. So yeah, I think from the principle of this, you can take that. On the other side, the business aspect, I don't know, it seems a little shady.
Yeah, they need to work some things out.
They need to work a little something out. Listen, and speaking of working out, we are going to work things out with our girl Jenny and talk some NWSL. And we're going to do that right now. So the NWSL returned to action over the weekend following the international break, and there was plenty of action to talk about. And we've got CBS sports reporter and soccer analyst Jenny Chiu joining the show. Jenny, welcome to We Need to Talk Now. Welcome to your first time. Hopefully not your last time.
Hopefully not my last time. You guys are doing a great job. Big fan of y'all. So this is awesome.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Well, listen, there is so much to get into. The Kansas City Current and the Orlando Pride right now remain undefeated, although the Pride did see their win streak snapped by San Diego. And today, Christian Press returned to training camp, or returned to training rather, with Angel City 2 years to the day of her ACL tear. We absolutely love a comeback story here on We Need to Talk Now. Just a lot of wild takes and plays and just a wild weekend of play altogether. What was your biggest takeaway from everything? And then I'm going to let Alicia dive into this a little bit more specifically.
I think you mentioned a really big one there, Kristen Press. She tore her ACL in 2022. So we're, like you said, 2 years to the day. She had to have 4 surgeries. Originally, it was just an ACL tear. So for that to have been a tough road for her to return to field, this is the first time she's going to be in team training, right? So she's been on one-on-one training for about 2 years. So that's wild for her. And I know that a lot of her loyal fans are so excited to have her back on the field, back in training. And then we don't know when she'll be in gameplay, but the fact that she's back in team training is a huge deal for someone who has been through such a difficult road with 4 surgeries.
4 is crazy.
It is crazy. And I don't think a lot of people know that she went through those 4 surgeries.
No, I thought it was 3.
So
So I did not know there was
yeah.
a 4th one. That's wow, insane.
I mean, listen, 1 is enough, okay? But let
Yeah.
alone 4.
Listen.
But I'm curious, which team, Jenny, has surprised you the most at this point in the season?
Well, Alicia, I'm just going to stop you really quick because I didn't mention, but just the Wrigley Field match against the Chicago Red Stars and Bay FC deserves a quick shout out there. 35,000 plus people at that match, which
Wow.
is a record. It's growing the sport. It's becoming more accessible because it was in downtown Chicago, and that's something that they don't have. SeatGeek Stadium is like way in the suburbs, and it's hard to access the Chicago Red Stars playing, and that's how you get so many people. It's obviously Wrigley Field, normally a baseball field, put down as a football field, soccer field, has the record there. And then the fact that this weekend had 110,000 people at a NWSL weekend. So across all NWSL matches, that's also a record, surpassing 100,000 in attendance for a weekend. So when Ashley asked me, the biggest standout, I went straight into Kristen Press because that was exciting, but I should have actually mentioned those big crowds are something that we have been fighting for in the women's arena, as you guys are aware of. So the fact that that has happened this weekend is wonderful. In terms of your question, sorry, team that has impressed me, Orlando Pride. Orlando Pride is still undefeated, like Ashley mentioned at the start of the show. And the reason why they stand out to me more than Kansas City Current, only because you mentioned both of them are still undefeated, both of them worthy of admiring, is that for the last few years, they have gone through such a come up. Come 2019, they were the last in the league, as in very last in the league. They were conceding 53 goals in that season. Then there was the COVID year, which we're not going to talk about. 2021, they were third to last, same one more year after that. And then last year, they missed out on the playoffs by goal differential. So that is the final day of the regular season to go into playoffs by goal differential, as in 1 goal, not by a point, by a goal. And when that happened, I think that was a really huge wake-up call for them last season. After that, 2024 is where we are now, and they are one of the best defenses in the league. They are undefeated. They're in top 2 spots in the NWSL. So just kind of seeing their progression and their growth throughout has been so impressive, and I think that they deserve a quick shout out there for that.
Listen, they definitely deserve a shout out for that. That was a lot, and also a lot to say, Jenny, for sure. But one thing I definitely want to talk about is Sophia Smith. So she could miss this weekend's games because of a second yellow card that she got. And when you look at the clip, and you could totally describe exactly what happened, but she almost looks like a little kid, like excited to like, it was almost like she reverted back to when she was young playing soccer. It was very almost strange to watch. What was your take on what happened with Sophia Smith and how it could impact everything moving forward?
Well, it's a great point that you mentioned that she was kind of childlike in that instance. Like the truth is that it was an immature moment for her. She is a leader on the national team. She is a leader for the Portland Thorns, and to do something like that when you know who you are, and what you represent to the sport and everything, I don't know if she had a lapse in judgment, but obviously the cameras are on you. Obviously you are Sophia Smith and people care about what you do. You already have a yellow card. You can never forget that when you have a yellow card. Now she has a red card, and you can't play in the next match when that happens. So that puts your team in a bad position. My take was it was a little bit immature of her, and it's not something that we've seen from her. She typically is very mature and very poised in everything that she does. So I was surprised by it, and mostly for her lack of acknowledgement of what she means to the team, right? This is a player that leads their front line, that leads their goals scored, and they look to her for leadership. Although she is so young, they look to her for leadership. That was not a leader move right there. Would you agree, Ashley?
No, it's definitely not a leader move. And to your point, when you're kind of the leader of your team, whatever that team may be, everyone looks to you for guidance, for direction, but more importantly for an example. And unfortunately, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And when you are someone who has that responsibility, there's a little bit more on you to go ahead and do certain things and not act a certain way. And she fell short of that. So it's definitely going to be a detriment to her team. But I want to go back to something you said when we opened the segment, and you were just giving all the accolades on, everything that went down over this weekend. And one thing you mentioned to me that really stuck out was you mentioned where or how sometimes the change of venue is the most important thing when it comes to bringing in crowds and making sure that there are historic crowds watching these women do what they do so well. And I wonder, Do you think in a grand scheme conversation, obviously there's exceptions to the rules and it's not as easy as just simply picking up and moving. But do you think that that's what this is missing? This league is missing, this sport is missing, are venues in better locations that make it accessible for fans who are interested, who do want to see these women play, to go ahead and be able to do it at more of a convenience than having to trek out 10 miles this way or 30 miles that way or 60 miles this way? Is that where we're kind of falling short here?
No, that's a great point. Ashley, that's a great point. This is unique to Chicago, right? The fact that Chicago is Chicago and everything is built in the city. So you have to go to the suburbs for this, match is unique. There are many stadiums that are in the heart of the downtowns, Kansas City, especially the LA teams have a great setup where they are close to things that they need to be at. And you're seeing those record numbers. So you mentioned that accessibility, opening the door and possibilities for people to go to these games. We talk about ticket pricing sometimes, but this is something that we have seen when they are placed in the right place, they are marketed, they do have those possibilities and those advantages. We are seeing those numbers continue to rise in women's soccer in this country and all over the world, honestly, because it has been growing all over the world. But Chicago is a unique situation. It has been very hard on the men's side as well, MLS, to get fans because of that. So yes, I think that this was a good kind of sample size of, if you have it in a more accessible location, you talk about accessibility, more people will come to the games. It's something that, Wrigley Field is in the center of town. It is something that people know about. It's something that people, feel used to going to the games. So maybe you have never been to a soccer game, but you're a baseball fan and you know that this is happening at Wrigley Field, and it is common for you to go to Wrigley Field and you go to this game and you fall in love with soccer, or you fall in love with women's soccer or the Chicago Red Stars. And I think that that's what it is, right? As three women that love sports and love women's sports, it really just takes you going to one game to fall in love, in my opinion. I don't think that if you try it, you're like, oh, absolutely not. It's more so the reluctance of trying it. I think you're very easily swayed to be an admirer of what these women do and how strong and graceful they are in everything that they do. So getting someone to just open the door, which if you are giving it more accessibility to people, I think just turns into a lifelong fandom. And so, yes, absolutely. I think you have a great point there.
Yeah, I love that. If you build it, they will come.
100%.
Yeah, and a lot of people, 100%. And a lot of people are going to be going out to these matches. What matches do you have circled, Jenny, for the upcoming weekend of action?
Oof. Okay, so there is quite a few. We're talking about on CBS, because we are CBS ladies here, the Cascadia rivalry between Seattle Reign and Portland Thorns, which I just talked about, Sophia Smith. This comes into play quite a bit, guys, because Seattle has been having a very disappointing season under Laura Harvey, their head coach. This is something that we have not seen from them. They are typically contenders. They're typically top half of the table. Right now, they're at the very bottom half. So if you take a look at it just stat-wise and this season-wise, you would think, okay, Portland's going to take this one. But that's not the case, because Sophia Smith's red card kind of changes everything. And Portland Thorns' ability to score goals, the fact that she is the centerpiece of their attack. If I'm Seattle Reign, I'm licking my chops and saying, you know what? This gives us an opportunity to go ahead and get some points here. And they need to get points, and they're going to want to stop their skid, right? They're not winning games. They're losing so many games. So they want to stop that, and they're due for a win. I don't know if you guys have heard that terminology in sports, but like, even though you're losing, you're due for a win now.
Probability.
You're feeling it right now. And the fact that Sophia Smith is not going to be there, I think we had mentioned earlier that they're going to be appealing the red card or whatever it may be. I don't see that going through. I spoke to Christina Uncle, a referee that we have on our show, to give us the rules and analysis there. And she said that the only way that they can overturn it is to prove that there was a factual error. The facts say that she did move the ball away. We see that in the video. They should not succeed in their appeal because we see that. And she said, I'm not sure about this year, but a few years ago, there was payment to appeal. So you're just wasting your money if you're appealing, because we can all see with our eyes that you made a mistake and it is due for a red card. So we'll see.
Has Sophia Smith spoken out about the instance thus far, or does she plan on making a statement if the appeal, or when the appeal, I should say, based on everything that you just said, comes back and it's with the call stands as is? Do you think that she'll make a statement or apologize to the fans, to her team, the city, whatever the case may be, or just kind of let this moment come and go?
Interesting. I don't know. I haven't seen Sophia Smith in a situation like this, right? So this is unique. Like I said, she's a very mature player. She usually just does right by everything. So this is something I'm surprised to see. I think it would be fine for her to speak out and just say, I'm in error of judgment in that moment. I got excited. I got whatever it may be. But Either way, I think everyone knows and acknowledges that she made a mistake, and it happens in the heat of the moment. Things happen. But no, not that I know of. I have not heard her make a statement.
Yeah, and I hope she does, because I really do. You're talking about just like a lapse of judgment or even something that was uncontrollable. It just really looked like she was just like, I don't know, mischievous. It was very strange. So we've all, got caught up before doing something that was uncharacteristic of ourselves. So I hope that she just says, hey, I messed up. That's all I can say. I mean, at the end of the day, people make mistakes and that it is what it is. But it's a huge mistake for a team, no doubt. No doubt.
Definitely.
Yeah. So the weekend is like a halfway point of the season. So if you had to pick today one team to win it all, who would you pick, Jenny?
Ooh.
I have been writing this since like match day 1, so I'm not changing my mind. But Kansas City Current, Alicia, I know that you're aware of how many goal scorers they have and how good they have been all season long. So for me, they are going to be the winners. They're under Vlatko Andonovski, the former head coach of the U.S. women's national team. And somehow he is just so successful in club ball and as a club coach. And on the U.S. women's national team, he was not cutting it. Obviously, we know how they did in the World Cup. But he has something with this team, and they have so many wonderful players. I've talked about it on Attacking Third a million times, the attack that they have across the front line. Alicia, I just want to open the floor to you to speak wax lyrical about Kansas City Current.
Well, what I would say, this is actually not really to do with the actual team. No, it's something I want to say. They've invested a lot into the team, and the stadium that they build like a whole practice facility and stadium. And that's something that
Stadium is all women's stadium. So that's the first one of its kind in the world, women's soccer stadium. Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you look at that and the investment that they're having in women's sports, and then also just within your team, if you look across the board at all like women's sports, like the Seattle Storm, for example, is one that I would draw upon. Is they have built an entire practice facility, which they didn't have before, and most WNBA teams don't. And I really feel like when you invest in your team like that and show them the importance of who they are and that it's important for them to train in a facility that is theirs and only theirs, you're going to get that back. I personally believe that. So when you speak about the Current, I'm like, I understand why something, in and about the play of the players, obviously, in the coaching and everything like that. I just love the investment that they've had to their team, and they put their money like where their mouth is, and it's like, we appreciate you. I mean, that in itself, I know it's like base level, like, oh, appreciation, but it goes a long ways. So that's what I would say about the Current.
No, definitely true. I mean, even when you look at sports across the board, right? I remember when the Cowboys installed lazy boys in their locker room so the players could sit in comfortable chairs. That was like back 25 years ago. That was like a big deal. And I think I recently just read, I want to say it's Real Madrid. I may be getting the team wrong, but they have individual suites for their players to get therapy in, to go ahead and rehab in, to work personally with their trainers, to nap in if they want, like not a locker room, an individual suite with like a bed and like a little espresso machine. It's insane when you give those type of perks, if you will, and also just you go ahead and reiterate, like, we are here for you and we are here to make your job easier. To your point, Alicia, I 100% believe that you get that back full throttle, and it just makes the team want to work harder for you because you're working hard for them to make sure that they're comfortable so that they can go out and be the best athletes that they can be. I agree with that completely.
I would take it even 2 steps further. Like these are athletes, and these are, things that you guys are mentioning there, the training facilities, the extra perks that you get, and just making sure that that we're investing in you. Us as workers in the normal world, we can all agree that someone that's investing in us, we want to do the best work for them.
Yeah.
So whether it's, your coach being very invested in your growth, or your boss being invested in your growth, and all that is, you feel like, okay, this personal investment in me and this interest in me and wanting my betterment, I want to give back to that. And I think that is something that we see in the normal world too. If we're not athletes, just like that respect gets paid both ways.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up this segment and move on to one of our favorites, I want to get your maybe too early picks, or maybe not too early at all. Maybe you are 100% confident in how this is going to play out. So I want your pick for Rookie of the Year, Golden Boot winner, and MVP.
Okay. Rookie of the Year for me right now, Croy Bethune. I know that it is too early, but Croy Bethune has come onto the stage and made a name for herself. It could be Ali Setnor because she has basically led the Utah Royals, but Utah Royals are doing so poorly. I imagine she would not win that just because her team is doing so badly. Croy Bethune, on the other hand, for Washington Spirit, has a great amount of players around her and leadership around her between Sarr and Trinity Rodman, where she gets to shine in a way that Ali Setnor doesn't. So Croy Bethune for me, Rookie of the Year. Golden Boot winner, I think Barbara Banda. She has just, I think one of the latest ones was like 8 goals in like 9 games or something crazy. She has been scoring off the hook. Don't quote me on those exact numbers. I'm just throwing numbers out there that she is assisting and scoring at a wild rate. And she just came into the league. Something that I find so interesting. We interviewed her on Attacking Third a couple weeks ago, is that many players that come from another country or another league that have no experience need time to adjust to this league. Barbara Banda gets off the floor running. She immediately started and she was scoring, assisting right off the bat, and she's making a difference. I mean, when you look at the field, you can look for 2 minutes and you get a kind of like a smell test if you know the game. She immediately stands out to you. So for me, she's going to be the Golden Boot winner. MVP, that's a tough one. I don't know. I can't. It's too early for me to tell you who MVP is going to be, but I think I feel really strongly about Croy Bethune being Rookie of the Year, Golden Boot winner being Barbara Banda, if she stays healthy.
All right, well, we'll let you slide on the last one because you gave us convictions on the first 2. We're going to go ahead and let that one rock because, again, to your point, it's a lot to choose from. There's still a lot of time left in the season to go ahead and make your push for certain awards. But we're going to go ahead and switch gears now to a segment we like to call What's Up Now. And we're very excited about this one because this is a big, big week for women's sports on CBS. So first and foremost, let's clap it up for women's sports on CBS. Listen, just so much happening throughout this week, specifically the weekend. First, Saturday, the Connecticut Sun will face off against the Dallas Wings on CBS at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then on Sunday, it's a full day of women's sports. First, the Sky and the Fever will face off at noon Eastern. Of course, nobody's going to have anything to say about that one, right, Alicia? It's going to be quiet. No one's going to have anything to say about that game.
Nothing at all. Never.
Then we have the Meher LPGA Classic that will air from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern on CBS with top players like Nelly Korda set to play. And then finally, to cap it off, we have the Cascadia rivalry, which will take place between Seattle and Portland at 4 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Jenny, what are you looking forward to most in this weekend of women's sports?
Oof, I'm going to pick soccer. That's what I talk about every day. That's what I watch every day. We talked about the CBS match between the Cascadia teams in Seattle and Portland. But again, the Bay FC and Utah Royals are the 2 expansion sides that joined the league this year, and they are playing against each other. So that's going to be interesting. These are 2 teams that we've kind of pitted against each other on how their coaches come in, how their tactics have come in, whether they have an identity as a team. And so while they're on very different, performance levels, it's still interesting to see you started on the same level playing field. Where are you against each other? That's something we haven't seen them do before. So that's going to be exciting as well.
And speaking of pitting players against each other, we'll have the Sky and the Fever playing. Alicia, go ahead and be for must-watch TV. I know that's a game that you're going to be watching. I'm going to be watching that as well. And we're going to go ahead and see if the Connecticut Sun plan on losing anytime soon. I don't know, about you, but I'm going to go ahead and see if, they plan on making something happen. But I want to go ahead and before we move on and close this segment out, I do want to go ahead and just give CBS their props. Just because we are in a very, very lucrative time for women's sports, but also a sensitive time. And I feel like that's the best way to kind of explain it, especially with all of the rhetoric that has been happening over the course of, I want to say the past 2 weeks, really, but I think it goes beyond that, but just not in terms of as under the microscope as it's been in the past 2 weeks. I feel like that's fair. And we keep calling for allies and we keep calling for people to do the work and to do their homework and to really, really be invested in women's sports the way that they are in men. And that's not just about, giving it a platform on TV and maybe throwing it in a segment on a sports talk show or sports radio. It's about really doing the work, really learning these women's names, learning their stats, learning the history of the individual sports. And I just want to give props to CBS for giving a platform for a variety of different women to not only talk about sports, but also a variety of different women to showcase what they mean to their individual sport, and having a day of sports throughout this weekend. And I guess later on in the week as well, since I believe it starts Thursday, is just so monumental and so important to growing the games across the board, whatever the game may be. So we definitely want to give props to CBS on doing such an amazing job at doing the work.
Yeah, and props for sure. And I think one thing that I really love is that people tend to focus on one sport in women's sports.
Yeah, it's a great point.
And they just stick to that one sport, but you see represented here 3 sports, just in this one big weekend. So that's a shout out too, because we need to invest in all women's sports, and you see that this is reflected in this big weekend that we're celebrating. So
Absolutely.
definitely watch.
Sure.
Watch
and
all
my
of
bad,
them.
Connecticut son. I forgot y'all already lost one. I thought you were undefeated in my head. I was holding
They're
on
just
to that
that good,
record.
Ashley.
Yeah.
They're just
My
that
bad.
good.
I forgot they already got a loss on their record. In my head, you guys are undefeated still. So just ignore me.
Undefeated in our hearts.
Undefeated in our hearts. Jenny, we are so thankful for you joining the show. We had so much fun talking with you, and we hope you come back.
Absolutely. You guys can let me know whenever you want. I enjoyed it. I'm always here to spread the gospel of women's soccer. So here I am.
We love it. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, and you are coming back. You don't have a choice.
Listen, we want to thank you all for joining us on another amazing episode of We Need to Talk Now. And we want to remind you, as always, if you want to follow along with myself, Alicia, or the show in general, we have all of the social channels for you to go ahead and do that. We're on Twitter, X, whatever the kids are calling it nowadays, Instagram, TikTok. All the information you need is right there. And as always, at the end of the show, we're going to throw a QR code up on the screen. You can scan that and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. If that's Spotify, if that's Apple, if you're more of a podcast listener than a podcast watcher, we got you covered there too. And make sure you are sharing with a friend who shares with another friend who shares with another friend, and keep spreading the word on how incredible women's sports actually is, and all the amazing women that find themselves in this industry wherever they may find themselves. And that does it for another episode of We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. Till next time, guys. Thank you.
See you next week. I was a little too early.